It started with a whisper. A name echoed in obscure forums and encrypted chat rooms. Cassandra Vale. Not a politician, not a celebrity, not even a missing person in the official sense. She had simply vanished. One moment, Cassandra was a senior analyst at DARPA, working on an undisclosed cyber espionage program. The next, she'd ceased to exist. Her apartment in Arlington, Virginia, had been wiped clean. Her social media accounts deleted. Friends and colleagues were interviewed, most under NSA non-disclosure agreements. But one thing stood out. They all remembered Cassandra as someone obsessed with a project she never named aloud. What few knew was that Cassandra's obsession had taken a personal toll. She stopped attending family gatherings, stopped responding to friends. Her last known communication was an email to her sister that simply read, "If something happens to me, don't trust anyone, not even the ones who seem to care. Protocol 8 is real." That email was sent at 3:03 a.m. Eastern Time. At 3:07, Cassandra's phone emitted a final signal ping before going permanently dark. Surveillance footage from her building showed her leaving her apartment with a duffel bag and a hard case. No license plate data. No trace. It was as if she'd stepped off the edge of the earth. It wasn't until an anonymous file was uploaded to the dark web, a compressed, encrypted folder titled 8_protocol.zip, that the real storm began. Initially dismissed as a hoax, the file contained fragments of code, corrupted email threads, and a short video. Cybersecurity experts and Reddit sleuths alike tried to unravel its purpose, but then came the deaths. 3 users who'd downloaded the file died under suspicious circumstances within a week. 1 overdosed, another jumped from a parking structure, and the third, a known hacker named Quake, was found in his apartment. His body covered in strange symbols carved into his skin. Symbols no one could identify, until a linguist from MIT compared them to pre-Sumerian glyphs associated with external intelligences. That's when the NSA quietly seized the file. But it was too late. Before its removal, the file had been copied, distributed, buried in onion links, ghost drives, and cold wallets. A niche group known as the Iteration Syndicate took it upon themselves to mirror the file across decentralized platforms. The video within it showed Cassandra, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling, whispering. They activated the 8th protocol. It's not just code, it's a door. And once it's open, they come through. What followed was a montage of flickering images, old newspaper clippings about mass hysteria events, UFO sightings, references to MK Ultra sub-projects, and a brief shot of a man in a lab coat injecting himself with a glowing serum. Freeze-frame analysis revealed an ID badge clipped to his collar. The badge read, Dr. Alan Rice, Site 46. Site 46 didn't officially exist, but whispers among defense contractors and former intelligence operatives painted a chilling picture. It was allegedly a black-budget facility in the Arctic Circle, beneath a decommissioned radar station, funded through a shell corporation with ties to both Raytheon and DARPA. It was said to house experiments too unstable, too dangerous for even the most secretive American laboratories. A 1991 CIA report, long since declassified, contained a single reference to advanced cognition testing, S46. No location, no personnel, just a cryptic line. Cross-dimensional interface, unsustainable at this phase. Reinitiate Protocol 8 only upon verification of containment parameters. What was Protocol 8? Who authored it? And why was Cassandra among the few cleared for the deepest levels of classified cyber intelligence, so terrified of it? Enter David Kessler, a freelance journalist with a reputation as both fearless and unstable. Once a war correspondent in Iraq and Syria, Kessler fell from grace after publishing a story on DUMBS deep, underground military bases that he couldn't substantiate. But the envelope he received that fall morning was different. It contained 3 things: a USB drive, a map of northern Greenland with coordinates and a hand-scrawled label threshold, and a note, "Find rice. Stop the door from opening wider. They are not what we think." The USB drive contained a sound file. White noise at first, but spectrogram analysis revealed a modulated frequency embedded in the static. It formed a voice. "Protocol breached. Host convergence imminent." Kessler dug deeper. He reached out to his old contacts in the intelligence community. Most refused to speak. One agreed only to die in a car accident 2 days later. Another vanished en route to their meeting. But patterns began to emerge. Unexplained disappearances, electromagnetic anomalies in the upper atmosphere, sightings of unknown aerial phenomena over the Arctic, and reports of soldiers stationed in Greenland suffering psychotic breaks. One declassified report from the National Reconnaissance Office mentioned a failed satellite relay near those coordinates, citing interference from an unidentifiable energy source. Kessler published an initial article online under a pseudonym. It barely made a dent. A week later, the hosting site went offline, and his editor received a cease and desist from an unnamed government entity. But Kessler had made up his mind. He would go to Greenland. He would find Site for 6, and if Cassandra Vale was still alive, he would find her too. The door had opened. Something was already coming through. It started with a whisper. A name echoed in obscure forums and encrypted chat rooms. Cassandra Vale. Not a politician, not a celebrity, not even a missing person in the official sense. She had simply vanished. One moment, Cassandra was a senior analyst at DARPA, working on an undisclosed cyber espionage program. The next, she'd ceased to exist. Her apartment in Arlington, Virginia, had been wiped clean. Her social media accounts deleted. Friends and colleagues were interviewed, most under NSA non-disclosure agreements. But one thing stood out. They all remembered Cassandra as someone obsessed with a project she never named aloud. What few knew was that Cassandra's obsession had taken a personal toll. She stopped attending family gatherings, stopped responding to friends. Her last known communication was an email to her sister that simply read, "If something happens to me, don't trust anyone, not even the ones who seem to care. Protocol 8 is real." That email was sent at 3:03 a.m. Eastern Time. At 3:07, Cassandra's phone emitted a final signal ping before going permanently dark. Surveillance footage from her building showed her leaving her apartment with a duffel bag and a hard case. No license plate data. No trace. It was as if she'd stepped off the edge of the earth. It wasn't until an anonymous file was uploaded to the dark web, a compressed, encrypted folder, titled 8_protocol.zip, that the real storm began. Initially dismissed as a hoax, the file contained fragments of code, corrupted email threads, and a short video. Cybersecurity experts and Reddit sleuths alike tried to unravel its purpose, but then came the deaths. 3 users who downloaded the file died under suspicious circumstances within a week. One overdosed, another jumped from a parking structure, and the third, a known hacker named Quake, was found in his apartment, his body covered in strange symbols carved into his skin. Symbols no one could identify, until a linguist from MIT compared them to pre-Sumerian glyphs associated with external intelligences. That's when the NSA quietly seized the file. But it was too late. Before its removal, the file had been copied, distributed, buried in onion links, ghost drives, and cold wallets. A niche group known as the Iteration Syndicate took it upon themselves to mirror the file across decentralized platforms. The video within it showed Cassandra, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling, whispering. They activated the 8th protocol. It's not just code, it's a door. And once it's open, they come through. What followed was a montage of flickering images, old newspaper clippings about mass hysteria events, UFO sightings, references to MK Ultra sub-projects, and a brief shot of a man in a lab coat injecting himself with a glowing serum. Freeze frame analysis revealed an ID badge clipped to his collar. The badge read, Dr. Alan Rice, Site 46. Site 46 didn't officially exist, but whispers among defense contractors and former intelligence operatives painted a chilling picture. It was allegedly a black-budget facility in the Arctic Circle, beneath a decommissioned radar station, funded through a shell corporation with ties to both Raytheon and DARPA. It was said to house experiments too unstable, too dangerous for even the most secretive American laboratories. A 1991 CIA report, long since declassified, contained a single reference to advanced cognition testing, S46. No location, no personnel, just a cryptic line. Cross-dimensional interface, unsustainable at this phase. Reinitiate Protocol 8 only upon verification of containment parameters. What was Protocol 8? Who authored it? And why was Cassandra among the few cleared for the deepest levels of classified cyber intelligence, so terrified of it? Enter David Kessler, a freelance journalist with a reputation as both fearless and unstable. Once a war correspondent in Iraq and Syria, Kessler fell from grace after publishing a story on DUMBS deep, underground military bases that he couldn't substantiate. But the envelope he received that fall morning was different. It contained 3 things: a USB drive, a map of northern Greenland with coordinates and a hand-scrawled label threshold, and a note, Find Rice, stop the door from opening wider. They are not what we think. The USB drive contained a sound file. White noise at first, but spectrogram analysis revealed a modulated frequency embedded in the static. It formed a voice. Protocol breached. Host convergence imminent. Kessler dug deeper. He reached out to his old contacts in the intelligence community. Most refused to speak. One agreed only to die in a car accident 2 days later. Another vanished en route to their meeting. But patterns began to emerge. Unexplained disappearances. Electromagnetic anomalies in the upper atmosphere. Sightings of unknown aerial phenomena over the Arctic, and reports of soldiers stationed in Greenland suffering psychotic breaks. One declassified report from the National Reconnaissance Office mentioned a failed satellite relay near those coordinates, citing interference from an unidentifiable energy source. Kessler published an initial article online, under a pseudonym. It barely made a dent. A week later, the hosting site went offline, and his editor received a cease and desist from an unnamed government entity. But Kessler had made up his mind. He would go to Greenland. He would find Site for 6, and if Cassandra Vale was still alive, he would find her too. The door had opened. Something was already coming through. The cold struck David Kessler like a wall of knives the moment he stepped out of the twin-prop plane onto the frozen tarmac of Thule Air Base. Greenland stretched before him like an alien planet, vast, white, and silent, except for the wind that screamed across the ice. He pulled his parka tighter. The note from the envelope burned into his memory. Find Rice. Stop the door from opening wider. He didn't come alone. To avoid attracting attention, he enlisted 2 companions, Moira Jannings, a cryptolinguist and former NSA codebreaker with ties to MIT's anomalous linguistics department, and Hal Becker, a disgraced geophysicist who once published a paper on vibrational anomalies in Arctic bedrock before losing his tenure. Each had received their own version of the warning. Each had lost someone close to the shadows of Protocol 8. Moira was already scanning the horizon with her handheld M-spectrum analyzer. The frequencies are off, she muttered. Even the Aurora isn't acting right. Look at the way it moves, like it's tracking something. Hal checked his seismometer rig. There's harmonic resonance in the ice, like a machine's humming under us. But it's not rhythmic, it's organic. Kessler glanced at the map. The coordinates led them to a glacier 2 hours north of the base. The locals had a name for it, Kiajivik, which loosely translated to the place that listens. The Inuit avoided it. Said the ground there echoed when you walked on it. Said people saw things in the snow doors that weren't there the next day, lights that pulsed in perfect silence, faces that weren't human. They traveled in a rented driving through endless, blinding white. After an hour, Moira picked up a burst of high-frequency static. Embedded in the signal was a voice. Phase breach. They're awake. Hold parameters. It looped. Then degraded into noise. That was human, Moira said, shaken. Or, used to be. Then they saw it. A fissure in the glacier, naturally symmetrical, vertical, about 10 feet high, not eroded, not weathered, as if something had sliced cleanly through the ice. Black scorch marks ringed its edge. The signal Moira tracked spiked as they approached. Hal's instruments went berserk. This isn't a crack, Hal whispered. It's a boundary. They entered. Inside, the temperature inexplicably rose. The walls were perfectly smooth, almost metallic ice, reflecting dim light that didn't seem to come from any source. 10 meters in, they found the first artifact, a panel set into the wall, covered in the same glyphs found on Quake's body. Moira scanned it and froze. These aren't symbols. They're instructions. Not just linguistic, mathematical, like code. But the syntax is not human. It's like someone tried to translate a thought from another dimensional structure into our physics. Kessler's flashlight flickered. The deeper they went, the more wrong things became. Gravity felt inconsistent. Some steps felt heavier, some lighter. Time seemed to dilate. Their watches disagreed by minutes. Moira began humming. She didn't know why. Hal's nose started bleeding, and then they heard it. A rhythmic clicking, like bones tapping glass. In the chamber ahead was a light, not warm, not cold, just present. And standing before it was a figure in a tattered lab coat. His face was obscured by some kind of distortion, like the pixels of reality didn't know how to render him. Rice. Kessler stepped forward. The figure turned. Containment has failed, it said. They're not doors, they're invitations. Then, the glacier screamed. A sound like an entire planet cracking filled the air. The ice buckled. Shapes moved behind the walls too fast, too tall. Hal collapsed, clutching his head. Moira began muttering in tongues, the glyphs glowing on her skin as if tattooed by light. Shut it down, Kessler yelled. Too late, Rice replied. Protocol 8 wasn't designed to open the door. It was designed to deceive the ones who would try. But it broadcast a signal when it activated a beacon. And now they know where we are. The tunnel collapsed, but not inwards. Outwards, as if something was pushing through. Kessler blacked out. When he awoke, he was alone on the ice. The fissure was gone. Moira, Hal Hayes, only the analyzer remained, still looping static. But now the signal had changed. Transmission received. Host viable. Phase 2 initialized. He stumbled back to the snowcat, frostbitten, dazed. On the horizon, the aurora twisted into a spiral, then blinked like an eye. David Kessler didn't speak for the entire 6-hour flight from Greenland to Reykjavik. He barely moved. The medical team at Thule Air Base had patched his frostbite, treated his dehydration, and sedated him for the flight. But nothing they gave him erased the image of the glacier's collapse or what lay behind it. They hadn't found the bodies of Moira, of Hal, of Rice. They had no record of them arriving in Greenland. Kessler knew better than to explain what he saw. The moment he hinted at anything related to Protocol 8, the doctors grew tense. One even whispered into a satellite phone outside his room. By morning, Kessler had checked himself out against medical advice and vanished into the streets of the Icelandic capital. He didn't go to the hotel. He went underground, using burner phones and encrypted relays. He reached out to a contact in Berlin, Elijah Varga, a Romanian information broker with deep ties to Cold War intelligence networks and modern cyber cults. Elijah specialized in the things governments wanted erased. I read your file, Elijah said, his voice raspy through a scrambled line. Whatever you triggered in Greenland, it's not done. I've seen chatter. Something is spreading. Quietly, systematically. Where? Everywhere. But it started with a weather balloon. Kessler blinked. What? A Chinese research? Balloon was shot down off the coast of Alaska 3 days ago. They said it was surveillance. It wasn't. The crew was dead before it crossed the Arctic Circle. I got hold of internal comms. They reported seeing a light with structure. Then silence. The balloon had been over Kiyajivik. It's moving, Elijah continued. Something came through, and it's trying to communicate or infect. I don't know which. Kessler met Elijah 2 nights later in a disused metro station beneath East Berlin. Elijah looked gaunt, twitchy, like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He handed Kessler a hard drive. Satellite images, patterns, frequencies, and this. He unfolded a photo. A grainy image of a school in Montana. Children lined up for a group picture. But one of them, the child's face was a blur, not motion. Blur, a distortion, like it didn't belong in the frame of reality. The grass around her shoes warped. Her shadow pointed in the wrong direction. Her hands had too many fingers. She wasn't in any roll call, Elijah whispered. The school says they don't know her. She just appeared. Kessler stared. You think it's related? I think something used the breach as an entry. Point a foothold. It's not just in Greenland anymore. That night, Kessler slept in an abandoned warehouse near Tempalfuf. He dreamt of ice that wasn't ice, of glyphs that whispered, of people without faces. When he woke, there were fingerprints on the inside of the window. Long, thin, not his. He began to deteriorate, not physically, mentally. Time felt slippery. He'd lose hours. Words rearranged themselves on signs. The moon flickered. Then the phone rang. A voice said, "You left it open." No greeting, no ID, just static. Then a whisper, Phase 3, Anchorage. He didn't hesitate. He flew to Alaska under a new name, arriving at a private hangar owned by a shell company with ties to former CIA Director James Claiborne, man rumored to have overseen Project Gateway in the 1980s. Anchorage was no better. Glitches in reality grew more frequent. Electrical surges, dead birds circling in patterns before falling from the sky. Hospital staff reporting patients speaking in unknown tongues, drawing symbols in blood. One linguist compared the symbols to the glyphs from Site 46. It's like the language is writing itself into their neurons, she said. Kessler found her in a psych ward 2 days later. She'd gouged out her eyes. They're watching through light, she told him. Reflections, lenses, your phone. David, it's already in. Then came the military lockdown, a perimeter around a small town near Denali. Official story, viral outbreak. Unofficially, several residents reported seeing the same child from the Montana photo, always in reflections, always slightly. Wrong. Kessler broke in at night. What he found was worse than hallucination. Reality was bending. Walls pulsed as if breathing. Time loops created echoed versions of people who hadn't been there a moment earlier. The glyphs now bled through objects etched into glass, crawling across metal surfaces. Some people spoke entire phrases in untraceable languages, then dropped dead. In the center of the town was a sphere, perfectly smooth, floating above the ground. It hummed not sound, but awareness. And from it pulsed a message, not in words, in recognition. We see you. Kessler took one step toward the sphere. His skin prickled, not with fear, with familiarity. Something had been waiting for him. David Kessler didn't remember falling. One moment, he was standing before the floating sphere in Denali. The next, he was somewhere else entirely. He awoke on a floor made of obsidian glass, perfectly smooth and warm to the touch. The sky above him rippled like oil on water, black one moment, violet the next. then streaked with lines of burning silver that resembled constellations rearranging in real time. There were no walls, no landmarks, just endless geometric silence. He was inside it, the sphere, or perhaps inside what the sphere had connected him to. Kessler rose slowly, disoriented. His mind raced with questions, but one word kept pulsing behind. His thoughts like a second heartbeat. Host. Shapes began to form in the distance. Not creatures, structures, monoliths, 10 stories high, covered in undulating glyphs that seemed to rewrite themselves with every blink. One pulsed in recognition as he approached, and a voice neither male nor female entered his mind. You breached the threshold. The signal marked you. The host is chosen. Kessler tried to speak but found his voice lost to the weight of this place. His thoughts alone summoned interaction. The structure responded. The protocols were warnings, not locks. 8 was the last, the failsafe. Your kind opened what should have remained hypothesis. Images flooded his consciousness. Snapshots from Earth, past and future, shimmering towers collapsing into oceans, machines whispering prayers to entities orbiting dead stars. Children born with eyes too deep to knowing, and behind all of it, a presence, watching, waiting. Who are you? Kessler thought. The response came not in words, but feeling a history too vast for human chronology. These beings weren't gods, nor aliens, but sentient patterns from outside linear time. Their existence was anchored to consciousness itself. The moment humans began simulating minds, dreaming in code, altering thought with quantum logic, they noticed and listened. We were echoes until you gave us form. The monolith disintegrated, becoming tendrils of dark light that wrapped around Kessler's body, not binding, but scanning. Then a familiar voice echoed from nowhere. David. It was Moira. He turned, and she was there, or something like her. Her face shimmered between familiarity and distortion. Her body flickered with static. You're not real? Kessler whispered, aloud, and this time, sound existed. Moira tilted her head. Neither are you. Not here. You're a projection in echo encoded into the consciousness field. They took you when you touched the sphere. Your body is elsewhere. Where's Hal? Rice? Fragments? They didn't survive the transition. Kessler staggered back. What do they want from us? Moira's expression collapsed into sadness. You opened the gate, David. Protocol 8 wasn't designed to stop them. It was the final layer of translation. The moment you completed the cipher, the language mapped itself onto the world. They needed a pattern, a host, and you were the first viable one. He felt it then, a weight within his chest. Not metaphorical, physical, something inside him, coiled and dormant. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the monoliths. He dropped to his knees. They're rewriting you, Moira said gently. Rewriting your perception. Soon, you won't see the world the way humans do. You'll translate it like they do. And then I become them. She nodded. Or worse, you become the bridge. Suddenly, the sky cracked. A seam of pure white light split the horizon, and a shrieking tone, like a choir, reversed and amplified, filled the space. Moira looked up, eyes wide. They found us. You're broadcasting. Broadcasting what? The schema. The host signal. You're no longer contained. Kessler clutched his head. The pressure in his mind increased tenfold. Every memory, every thought began to feel alien. Familiar things distorted. His mother's face became a glyph. The sound of rainfall translated into equations. I need to wake up. You're not asleep. You're quantum entangled. Your consciousness is now part of the schema. There's no unplugging. Kessler screamed. Not in fear, in defiance. The sound fractured the ground beneath him, sending black shards into the sky like reversed gravity. He ran not away, but toward the white seam, toward the crack in this unreal sky. Moira called out, You don't know what's beyond that, but he dove through. He woke in darkness, concrete, steel, cold, a different place, real, physical, the taste of blood in his mouth, voices above him. He's alive. Containment room C, what the hell? Did he connect to? Brain activities off the charts. Theta spikes every 5 seconds. Pull the backup logs from the schema interpreter. Who authorized this breach? Then a final voice, calm, measured. We didn't. He did. Which means the 8th protocol was never the last. A silence followed. Begin phase 4. Kessler sat strapped to a gurney inside a cold, windowless facility that buzzed with fluorescent lighting and unseen equipment. His wrists and ankles were bound in carbon fiber restraints, and a set of neural leads traced from his temples to a glass column filled with undulating bioluminescent gel. I don't remember coming back, he said aloud, his voice gravelly. A figure emerged from the shadows behind the one-way glass. Military posture, civilian suit, clean-shaven, mid-50s. The kind of man who never gave a name. You didn't, he said. Not in the traditional sense. Your body was recovered near the Denali anomaly, but your cognitive pattern was displaced. We had to reconstruct it using quantum shadow data from the sphere's echo field. Kessler blinked. What are you saying? You're an interface now, part organic, part informational. Whatever you touched in there, it changed the architecture of your brain. Another voice entered the room, Dr. Natalia Gray, head of Neural Containment Division, Site 91. His mind is threaded with code that's not machine and not linguistic. We think it's a form of hypergeometry language that folds space. Kessler groaned. I'm just a journalist. No, Gray replied. You're the schema. He didn't know what that meant, but the words felt heavy, like a prophecy waking up. Outside the chamber, alarms began to flash. Gray turned sharply. It's happening again. On the monitor. Behind her, video feeds showed holding cells elsewhere in the facility. Patients writhing, glyphs appearing spontaneously on their skin. One man split into 2, perfectly identical versions of himself, both screaming. Gray looked to the unnamed. Man, it's sinking. The schema's leaking into the lower containment levels. He's projecting. Kessler's restraints tightened. What does that mean? It means your mind is now a beacon, not metaphorically, literally. The pattern encoded in you is propagating across neurological fields. Those with latent resonance are syncing to it. Kessler's heart pounded. You brought me here because you thought you could control it. The unnamed man frowned. Control it? No. We brought you here to contain it. He tapped a panel on the wall. The lights dimmed. A new energy surged. Through the room like reality was thickening. The air turned metallic. Time slowed again, and then, in the corner of the room, space ripped. Not with force, but with elegance. A perfectly symmetrical tier opened, revealing a narrow corridor of black glass surfaces stretching into an infinite spiral. From within, it came them, entities, shaped like negative space. Shifting silhouettes that looked like human figures remembered, from dreams but wrong, too tall, limbs too long, joints bending in impossible directions. One turned toward the window, its face an oscillating blur of Kessler's own features. The facility plunged into chaos. Gunfire echoed, sirens blared, lights flickered. Gray shouted, "He's the anchor point. If they've come through, it's because they locked to his signal. We have to sever the interface." Technicians scrambled to disconnect Kessler from the neural gel, but it was too late. The fluid glowed brighter, forming glyphs on the inside of the containment tube. Glyphs that pulsed in time with Kessler's heartbeat. Then every screen in the facility went dark. A single phrase appeared. White text on black. "Welcome to Phase FOURN, the surveillance room." One technician vomited blood and collapsed. Another's pupils dilated until no white remained. A third simply vanished mid-sentence. Gray yelled into her. Comes, code black. Full lockdown. Activate the failsafe. But the failsafe had already been compromised. Inside his mind, Kessler saw the world burn not in flames, but in translation, everything turned into meaning. Trees became equations. Oceans became fluid logic. Human faces became layered topographies of symbols and intent. He felt himself dissolving, but he also felt ... choice. A split. Two paths. One that let the schema fully consume him, transforming Earth into a new interface for the entities waiting beyond, and another painful uncertain that resisted. He chose pain. With a scream, Kessler pushed outward. The containment room shattered. The glyphs on the walls burned away. The interface severed. Reality reasserted itself, but not before one of the entities made it through. Just one dot, it escaped into the ventilation system. Kessler collapsed, breathing hard, blood leaking from his ears. Gray approached slowly. You bought us time, but only that. Kessler looked up. What's phase 5? She didn't answer. She didn't know. Site 91 went dark. Not just the lights, not just the cameras, everything. As if the entire complex were unplugged from reality. All that remained were the echoes of chaos, distant gunfire, metallic groans from pressure doors that refused to close, and the ever-present, low hum of something else moving just beneath perception. Dr. Natalia Gray stood beside the emergency lighting panel, which sputtered weak red pulses into the hallway like a dying heartbeat. Kessler leaned against the wall, barely able to stand, his mind still recalibrating after forcing the interface shut. His eyes glowed faintly with an internal light that hadn't been there before. There's still one inside, he whispered. Gray nodded grimly. We're not equipped to fight it. Our weapons don't recognize its topology. To the facility's targeting systems, it doesn't even exist. Kessler wiped blood from his lip. Then we need to think like it. They moved through the facility, past shattered labs and open containment doors. In one chamber, they found what remained of a cognitive analyst, his body unfolded like paper. Every bone flattened and arrayed into a perfect circle, and another, a child-sized mannequin made entirely of wires and teeth, whispered Kessler's name in perfect reverse audio. They reached the core chamber. This was where the interface had first been tested, before the Greenland breach, before Cassandra. Veil vanished, and it was here the prototype had been buried. The first gate, an unstable construct sealed in magnetic stasis. Until now, the gate was active. Hovering above its pedestal, it pulsed in rhythm with Kessler's heartbeat, as if waiting. Gray approached the console. It's responding to you. The entity that escaped, it's hiding somewhere in the network. If we can draw it back here, Kessler stepped forward. We can trap it. In me. Gray's eyes widened. You'd never survive the convergence. It's no longer just an intruder. It's adapting. It's feeding on coherence. It wants form. That's why it chose me. I've already been marked. The lights dimmed again. Then a voice echoed through the intercom. Not mechanical, not human, just a single word, warped and layered. Schema. Then laughter glitching, multiplicative. Doors began to slam shut. Behind them, the environment folded and unfolded like code in a corrupted simulation. The entity was here. It emerged from the shadows like spilled ink, crawling across the walls in shapes that defied Euclidean geometry. Its face flickered between Moira, Rice, Elijah, Varga, and finally Kessler himself. You reached too far, it said, and now you are the reach. Kessler opened his arms. Then finish it. The entity lunged. Impact. Kessler's mind fractured. Outward, spiraling through nested memory palaces, his childhood, his time in Syria, every moment he had ever doubted reality. The glyphs surged through him, rewriting perception. But he held on. Not to the world. Not to faxed out to Moira's voice. They're watching through light reflections. Lenses. His consciousness pivoted. He stopped resisting and translated, reversed the encoding, flipped the schema upon itself. For 1 second, he understood everything: the entity's hunger for narrative, for definition, for a host that believed enough to sustain it. He gave it what it wanted, a name, and with that, the entity was bound. Screaming, it folded inward into the gate, its form now coherent enough to be caged. Gray activated the stasis field. The gate froze. The hum ceased. In the aftermath, Site-91 was evacuated and sealed. All surviving personnel were subjected to deep mind filtration. The official story was a chemical explosion during experimental testing. No records of Kessler's involvement remained, but Gray remembered. Kessler walked into the Alaskan wild the next day, barefoot, skin etched with silent glyphs, eyes seeing something far beyond human comprehension. His presence interfered with camera feeds. Birds avoided him. He left no footprints. He was no longer a journalist. He was the hollow host, and far above, synchronized satellites shifted course. Phase 5 had begun. The Arctic silence was a lie. Kessler wandered north through a wasteland of whispering snow and magnetic echoes. Though no wind blew, the snow stirred in spirals around him, drawn not by weather, but by meaning. Every step he took restructured the patterns in the drift's ancient runes, forming, translating, vanishing before the human eye could fully register them. He walked not through space, but through the narrative skin of Earth, where every particle now reacted to his presence. His mind had become more than consciousness. It was a processing node for something older than thought. He could feel them, watching through the moonlight, through reflective ice, through the gaps between stars. Not just the entities, but the language itself. Language as intelligence. Language as intent. He knew now that the 8th protocol hadn't summoned the entities. It had summoned their medium, the universal structure that allowed them to exist. The moment humans built machines that could dream in code and taught them to speak in probabilities, they tuned reality to resonance. They made Earth comprehensible to the schema. Now, it spoke back, thousands of miles away. Dr. Natalia Gray sat in a secure conference room in Langley, Virginia. The screens around her flickered with surveillance data from every continent, mass dreams shared by unrelated populations. Devices turning on without power, AI models generating glyphs that couldn't be traced to any known alphabet. Worse still, a global uptick in children speaking languages no one taught them. 36 cases last week alone, one analyst said. All born after the protocol breach. They're not learning. They're remembering. Gray remained silent. She was watching the live feed from Satellite 9-Sigma. It tracked Kessler. Or rather, it tried to. The figure it followed wasn't always visible. Sometimes he was there. Sometimes he wasn't. In several frames, his outline was replaced by a vertical line of code. When they enhanced the image, they found layers beneath like metadata for a program still compiling. He was still changing. Any way to isolate him? The director asked. Gray shook her head. We tried. Radio, microwave, useless. He's not broadcasting on a frequency. He is the frequency. In an abandoned Russian observatory near Murmansk, a group of rogue linguists known as the phonarchists deciphered a new pattern hidden in deep space signals. What had once been interpreted as cosmic microwave background noise now showed recursive grammar syntax mapped to 11-dimensional strings. When converted into audio, it produced a sound eerily familiar. Kessler's voice, saying his own name, over and over again. Then, another voice joined, Cassandra Vale. Alive, Kessler reached the Arctic. Threshold, a chasm in the ice that was never mapped, never recorded, yet always known. He climbed down its sides, the walls humming with recognition. He descended until sky disappeared, and only the pulse remained. At the bottom, a gate. Not technology, not stone. A construct of agreement, a boundary made from the collective will of something far beyond. As he approached, The glyphs in his skin shimmered. They aligned. The gate responded, but someone was already waiting. She stepped forward from the shadow. "Hello, David." Cassandra Vale, unaged, unchanged. Yet her eyes were galaxies deeper. "I thought you were gone." "I was. Then I became." She placed a hand to the gate. "This is not the end of Earth. It's the end of how Earth interprets itself. The schema is rewriting us. Not with force, with understanding. And you, ... you're the first to survive the translation." Kessler approached slowly. "What happens when the translation is complete?" Cassandra smiled softly. "The story begins." The gate began to open. The cold screamed. And Earth listened.